Sometimes it can be hard to keep things in perspective when chapters are released so sporadically. War seems to be prevalent in all of them. Berserk has been inching towards its own version of Ragnarok ever since Griffith was incarnated into the physical world, but don't let the hype of an apostle resurrection make you forget the real event that kick-started the Eastern Exile Arc, Casca's kidnapping. It's the entire reason Schierke isn't back in her physical body yet, why Griffith is secure in his weakness as well, and why Guts can no longer stand up straight and swing Dragon Slayer without hungering for blood and power. It's not an exaggeration to say that saving Casca will be the same as saving the Berserkverse, because she's the key to defeating Griffith, whether she likes it or not. But if our heroes can't get to her on account of being a continent's length away from her, then who will? Well, this obscure Berserk character is already in place to do such a thing, and as an added bonus, she's already spent a lot of time with Casca. Without beating around the bush any further, let's dive into the Casca rescue theory and how it will give a seemingly random side character its great purpose. It's like breaking a needle out of 10 haystacks. The problem with rescuing Casca. Rescuing Casca is a discussion that's much easier to have from a theoretical perspective. You just need to sneak into the Falcon's castle, find the chamber that's hers, break her out of it, and then hopefully ride the branches of the world tree to safety. In theory, it's a classic jailbreak, and if it were any other castle of the old world, it might not have required a lot of planning either. The Band of the Falcon took a year to gather all the intel on Griffith's location within Wyndham once they were branded as traitors, but the actual rescue itself lasted for a day and a night. In that time, the rescue team broke Griffith out of his cell, killed a unit's worth of soldiers, group of assassins, an entire knightly order with an apostle leader, all while riding for the countryside of Midland. The Tower of Rebirth was as secure a structure as there could ever be in the entire kingdom, but with the right intel and the right insiders, the Falcons were able to smoothly rescue their leader. Replicating that in Falconia is going to be next to impossible because of the sheer scale of the city and the castle within. The Falcon's castle is comparable to the Wall from Game of Thrones, and we don't say that light. The path up to the castle has about a half-dozen way castles with paths so wide that two wagons can cross each other and there'd still be enough space for people to walk beside. George Martin often compared the soldiers defending the wall to ants when talking about an aerial view of them, and this shot of the Falcon's castle from chapter 335 brings a similar perspective to mind. It might not be 700 feet tall, but it's certainly tall enough to make scaling it out of the question. The castle guard is also about as big as an entire city's watch, so beating the patrols will be much harder than you might think. You can fly into the castle, and Serpico certainly has the tools to make it happen, but then Griffith has about 50 flying apostles in Pandemonium, and we can't imagine a foreign entity entering his domain of rule and escaping his notice. Then there's the problem of actually finding where Casca is being held and getting her out of there without causing too much of an incident. I mean, sure, Casca herself is apparently disarming guards whenever she breaks out of whatever trance Griffith's keeping her in, but to execute a successful jailbreak from the Falcon's castle, the rescuers will have to be quick and precise. They'll need to know Casca's routine down to the second, what her detail usually looks like, when there will be a lapse in her security, and how they can grab her in that moment. All of this would be a lot smoother if the rescuers had an insider like Charlotte. We doubt Griffith's future wife is even aware of what he's doing to Casca. Plus, the only reason she helped the Falcons was to rescue her beloved Lord Griffith. It'll have to be someone efficient and wily enough to trick the greatest liar in human history while carrying out a covert reconnaissance mission in tandem. An insider is the only way breaching the Falcon's castle could even be possible, because getting to it is a whole nother challenge. Falconia is quite possibly the largest city in the entire world right now. It's constructed around the base of the world spiral tree and has a circular perimeter, which makes conventional sieges more than a little difficult. Its size is more expansive than that of ancient Rome, and its outer walls, not as high as those of the Falcon's castle, are still enough to discourage siege ladders. The fact that it has pretty much only one overland entrance makes a breach at the city gates crucial. One could break the walls down, but sadly we have no Jerichos in this universe. Falconia has an over-water entrance as well, because the city's sprawling size stretches out into the sea. It has a protected harbor that houses its navy, but that's just it. It's a protected harbor. It would spot any enemy ships from a nautical mile away, and a sea approach might just be worse because the inspection would be twice as thorough. Thousands of refugees flock to Falconia overland every day, but by sea, the city usually only trades or defends itself. And if by some miracle the defenders were able to bypass the sea and land defenses, there's still Pandemonium to consider. Guts is the absolute last person that should enter the city on account of his brand of sacrifice. Apostles can't sense the brand, but they he can sense the bloodshed that follows it, Guts' brand makes him more of a liability than an asset. He's probably the only human that could hold back the Falcon's guard while helping a rescue team retreat. He's also a magnet for trouble. We don't think if he enters Falconia that Casca will be the person he seeks out first. That's a discussion for another time. For now, the truth is that breaking Casca out of the Falcon's castle is going to be a lot more difficult than breaking Princess Charlotte out of the Tower of Rebirth, with or without a giant black lion demon that can also fly. The job to rescue Casca needs an insider that can recognize her on sight and is clever enough to take advantage of all available circumstances. Luckily enough, Guts' team already knows such a person, and to be honest with you guys, we wondered what her great purpose for the story was going to be, besides being the most upstanding working woman of all time. She's already spent time with her before, why Luca is perfectly placed for the Casca rescue mission. One of the biggest fan-favorite characters from the Berserkverse is Luca. This woman, introduced during the Conviction arc, is the leader of a group of prostitutes, but she has an astute sense of judgment and morality, and her ability to empathize with others is bar none. Luca sticks her neck out for her girls to the extent that she's ready to have it lopped off to save one of them, and she does the same for those she deems helpless. That's how she came across Casca at the tail end of chapter 132. A few days after escaping Godot's ore mine, the mindless branded girl somehow found her way to the path leading towards St. Albion. It had become a refugee hotspot since the plague started breaking out all over Midland. It was known to be holy ground for the Holy See. St. Albion was going to be extremely crowded, what with the Tower of Conviction hosting the refugees, and coming to work there was a business decision for Luca. Then she saw Casca in the crowd gathered to bear witness to the brutality of Bloody Wheel Mozgus, and she knew instinctively that she couldn't leave her unprotected. Luca was the kind of woman who knew that everyone made their own choices. If someone wasn't capable of doing that, she all could to protect that person. She knew that Casca had some kind of mental illness the moment she saw her straddling a rebel attacker's face like it was a toy. She decided that she just can't leave her like that, especially with paranoia reeking through the air. So she takes her in and gives her a new identity. Luca is the one who christens Casca Elaine, name she carries with her for the rest of her mindless days. He covers her face with bandages and tells everyone she's her sister who suffers from syphilis to keep men away from her. Casca's mental regression helps sell the story rather easily, but Luca's wit and will can't be denied here. She could have easily left Elaine to her helpless fate, but instead, she cleverly disguised her and kept her safe from watchful eyes. As safe as was possible considering Nina was a part of the group, but Luca really did do her best. She led the search for Elaine when she vanished from their tent, and she was instrumental in getting Guts access to the Tower of Conviction. Despite everything that the girl put her through, including nearly letting her die, Luca protected Nina from the horrors of the Incarnation ceremony, ran into it headfirst with a smile on her face, as opposed to running away from it like the non-believers did. She readily displayed her ability to bend the rules when needed and the moral fiber to always protect one of her own, and by the end of the Conviction arc, Elaine was one of her own. Her girls inquired about her safety after all that demonic mumbo-jumbo they saw unfolding the previous night, but when Luca saw her with Guts, she knew their Elaine would be safe. She knows that Guts is not the kind of person to do anything without a reason, and she has intimate knowledge of the fact that Casca is not supposed to be in Falconia. She's supposed to be with Guts, the man who risked his life time and again to come rescue her from the clutches of misplaced faith. So, if she's not with him, then something has gone terribly wrong. She also knows that Griffith has been abandoned by his former war buddy Rickert, so there's something deeper at play, and it's nothing that paints her current landlord in a good light. Right now, Luca is an inn manager in Falconia, running it with her girls, sans Nina, and that's why she's perfectly placed to rescue Casca. Falconia is pretty much a civil bureaucracy at this. The city's guilds decide which job to give to which person based on their strengths, weaknesses, and skills. Luca's people management was never a question, but what will be crucial in her rescuing Casca is her discretion. Luca knows when to keep her mouth shut and what words to use when she does open it. Her being an inn manager tells us that she's trusted and connected enough in the Falconia community to get information about the castle, say where its secret entrances are located or where a certain new visitor might be being kept. In rather unexpected fashion, she is the fulcrum by which the Berserk world shall turn. She knows the truth about Guts' relationship with Casca, and she knows that whatever happened at the Tower of Conviction couldn't have been triggered by God. She has met every single character of importance on both sides and stands on rare neutral ground. If she were to be made aware of the fact that Griffith was the one behind that collapse and Casca's kidnapping, she might be more than motivated to help out. Her, Pepe, Bouquet, and Lucy have just the right numbers to infiltrate her handmaiden escort as well. In chapter 372, though the nature of Casca's time at Falconia is left questionable, considering she was drifting between reality and dreams near constantly. One thing we did notice is that she was always being tended to by 4 handmaidens. These women were commanded to keep Casca comfortable, but to also keep an eye on her, report back on any rebellious movement. Many a time did we see them shoot a glance in her direction when they saw her do something resembling her other life, and when Casca's mind started rebooting, her handmaidens were the ones to call the guards on her. Whether this was a real experience or not is left for us to decide, but considering Irvine shows up claiming to have ended the bird's flight at the end of that chapter, we're going to operate under the assumption that it was real, which means that those 4 handmaidens were also real, and that makes them Luca's way in. She could use her wit and charm to get herself entry into the castle alongside her girls. Once there, all she needs is the assignment to be Casca's guard maidens and a link to Schierke. The reason we bring up the Little Witch is that she's the only person that can facilitate the kind of precise escape required in Casca's case. Casca is being held in one of the most secure locations on the planet, near constant surveillance. Even if her rescuers placed people close to her, they couldn't exactly take her out the front door. They needed to be able to practically vanish in the night sky, and perhaps that's exactly what they'll do. The best path out of the Falcon's castle would be using the branches of the World Tree and then using the sky paths they represented. Sky paths would lead whoever entered them to a location far from their origin, and if the pursuer didn't know where to look, they technically wouldn't be able to find the target. Schierke's extended exploration of the Dragon Path using her astral body must be related to figuring out how to navigate within it, because even the best trained sorcerers can find it hard to keep themselves anchored once they enter. And besides, her stated goal was to find Casca's location to facilitate a rescue. Once all the intelligence has been gathered in one place, it won't be much of a problem getting it to Luca and her girls so they can do their bit. And to be frank with you guys, if there is a character we trust more than guts to save Casca, by all means, it's Luca. She's smart enough to outthink any suspicions being cast on her girls, she's fast enough to speed Casca out of the castle once they have her, and she's brave enough to hold off her companion's retreat should they ever be on the verge of getting cornered. Luca's causal role in the story seemed to be limited to being Casca's caretaker during the Conviction arc, but it's clear that Miura had bigger plans for her. Why else would he reintroduce her during the Fantasia arc? He's got a reputation for tying up every single loose end. The people of Falconia will eventually have to realize that they've pledged themselves to a demon. We can't think of a better source for that information than trustworthy community leader Luca. But her placement in Falconia and her familiarity with Casca isn't the only reason that Luca is important to the series. She could end up solving the greatest problem of the Eastern Exile Arc, which is how to get Guts to stop reeling. How Luca and her girls might become the reason Guts retains his grip on sanity. We've all been worried about our resident black swordsman ever since he vomited his guts out after visualizing his defeat. Okay, maybe that pun was a little unkind, but can't deny that Guts is in the worst shape we've ever seen him in, and that's because he feels responsible for all of it. Though Guts has found companions and once again learned the concept of trust, he doesn't bestow them with that in the ultimate sense. He doesn't trust his comrades with, say, the stories of his past or the truth about his path. He only tells them what they need to know, and as a consequence, he's kept them far away from himself. Guts' unspoken faith has paid dividends for him on several occasions, most notably when Isidro saved Casca from burning, but he's never openly or truly even thanked him for that. In his mind, he's still responsible for all of them, so when he loses Casca again, he immediately thinks of what he can do instead of how he can rely on others to help him. The realization that he can do nothing in the face of Griffith's powers is what truly breaks him. It's also the reason his inner beast of darkness is taunting him into claiming some of it. In chapter 373, the beast of darkness manifests in front of Guts' eyes and tells him that his flesh retains his true strength. He gave his blood and soul to the armor, it would give him power beyond measure. Clearly doesn't accept that offer right away. Though he passes out because of his sensory overload, Guts doesn't reject the suggestion either, and that's what worries us more than the plan to Ocean's 11 Casca. Chapter 372 opens with a shot from the perspective of Casca immediately after Griffith kidnaps her. Her first thoughts drift towards how this will affect Guts because she knows that without her, that boy is liable to do something hella stupid. Right now, Guts is walking the tightrope between rage and psychosis, and the only thing that can restore his faith is if he finds a way to rescue Casca. To his mind, that translates to killing Griffith, but trusting in his companions has never come naturally to him, has it? Guts doesn't know that Schierke is off into the ether looking for a way to rescue his beloved, and wouldn't be surprised if he was kept out of the loop on the whole rescuing Casca plan entirely. He has a tendency to get riled up every time he thinks about her getting hurt, or Griffith, and right now both of those things were happening in the same place. What Guts needs is to sit back and trust his comrades, because trust is the foundation of strength, not malice. If they're able to come through for him, Luca and her girls could contribute to keeping that foundation strong in a major way. Schierke might be able to pinpoint every location relevant to the rescue mission, but being a Spectre, can't exactly put things into motion. She'll need to rely on agents that can help her help Guts. Through this chain of humanity, Guts' sanity can be redeemed. If he were to discover that his companions, even the random girls he once found in St. Albion, were able to rescue Casca from Griffith without suffering major losses, his faith in humanity could very well be restored, because no one would have selfish reasons for saving Casca. Every person we've named in this video loves that woman like a sister. Guts needs to see that he doesn't always need to have everyone else's back. Sometimes people will repay the favor in kind, and when he lets that sink in, perhaps he won't need metaphysical chains to hold back his own darkness. Guts' morality is skewing towards doing everything possible to kill two birds with one stone, but if his burden were reduced by 50%, he'd have that much more freedom to deal with the other 50. Guts putting his faith in other people is an alien concept to him, but if there's anyone that can come through for Casca in his absence, it's Luca. Casca has been wishing for a reunion with Luca and the gang ever since she woke up, because she wants to express her gratitude to them. Little does she know, she'll be doing it for reasons far greater than protection if everything we've said actually does come true, and I think it's gonna. If Luca's great purpose is to rescue Casca from the Falcon's castle and perhaps die trying, then she'll be the greatest side character martyr of all time. When she was first brought in, she was just this obscure prostitute with a big heart, but over time, she's become familiar with all the major players of the series and earned the respect of Skull Knight himself. If that's not a major endorsement for the good team, we don't know what is, and we're hopeful that Luca's actions will end up resolving Guts' crisis of faith. After all, she did manage to knock some sense into Nina's head, and everyone thought she was irredeemable. That tells us there's hope for Guts yet, and as has been the case since the Golden Age, Casca is the key to it. Marvelous verdict. Unfortunately, that's all we got for you with this one. Casca's rescue needs to be done by someone that is just under the radar in Falconia to not be suspected of colluding, and given that Rakshas is no longer in the city, Luca and her girls are the safest bet. Or at least that's what we think after having considered every factor involved. What do you guys think? Will Luca end up saving Casca again, or is her great purpose related to something else? Let us know your thoughts on the Great Casca rescue mission in the comments down below. This is Wizard Wheezy signing off for now, but we'll see you guys in the next one, and until then, don't forget to keep on struggling, strugglers.